While the Chicago Bulls have definitely gone in a younger direction with their roster, there's a question on how much will the Bulls truly prioritize their future, especially considering the tough month of the season that the Chicago Bulls are going to be in when the season starts. We're going to take a look at that. Plus, we're going to ask, do the Chicago Bulls finally have the roster that fits the style that Billy Donovan has been trying to bring to the Chicago Bulls for the last couple of years? And we're going to look at an interesting trade idea for Zach LaVine from Zach Buckley. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off with this. So go back to a quote from Mark Eversley that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and where he said, "We're not focused on being a top 6 seed or being in the play-in. We're focusing on developing this group every single day and see how much better they can get over the next year." Now, that was kind of at the time, we understood what it meant, right? Like, this is the part of the course for the Chicago Bulls, that they're not necessarily aiming to be in the play-in or for a top 6 seed. They're really trying to see where this team is going to be organically. But the question is how much truly are they going to prioritize the future? Because while you can say we're focused on seeing where this team is going to be organically, when you face some hardships or this team goes in a different direction, it's going to be, all right, what do you then do to support whatever direction you're going on, right? The Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic still on this roster. And while some people think that this Bulls team has an upward ceiling of about 40 wins, I still don't see that myself. But when saying that is like, how much is this future truly going to be prioritized? To add to that, we've heard things like Jalen Smith has been promised an opportunity to kind of win that starting center position. Okay, are you truly prioritizing the future in that case, right? How much of the young guys, and Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, guys that people are projecting right now to be on the back end of the bench and maybe not get a whole lot of minutes, how much are you going to prioritize those guys, right? So while the Bulls have gone in a direction where you could tell, hey, the future is the thing that we're focused on right now, how much is that going to maintain true throughout this? Right now, the vision that I think the Bulls are hoping for is that you get these young guys, and plus Kobe White, he hits another a leap, Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey, like these guys continue their upward trajectory, and that keeps you at a certain level, right? And while you're not necessarily focusing on the playoffs, that you're hoping that trajectory comes. But the question that has there is that, what is the 2024-25 season going to look like for the Bulls? If the Bulls do get on to the slow start, which is kind of predicted based off how tough that first month is for the Chicago Bulls, as we lead and get closer and closer to the trade deadline, are we making moves that kind of solidify going younger, which, again, signing a player like Kenny Lofton, even though it's only Exhibit 10 deal, the Bulls moves this offseason. There's not been one move to me that signifies this is a team that is necessarily trying to get, or that is content with getting older. They've gone younger by everyone. Jalen Smith, a younger player than Andre Drummond. Miles Vucevic, younger than DeMar DeRozan. Josh Giddey, younger than Alex Caruso, right? Losing those 3 players. And then you get Kenny Lofton Jr. in here, right? And those type of things. And all the other moves, like you prioritize Kobe White in a lot of ways. Ayo Dosunmu moving in to a role of being that 6th man and that first guard off the bench. You still have some of the remnants here. Still got Zach. Still got Zoe. Still got Vooch. Still got Torrey Craig. Still got Javante, what's the ball-headed hoe's name? I keep forgetting his name. It is what it is. You got him still on the team as well, right? So you still have these players on it, and it's led people to rightfully so ask the question of, okay, what are we really trying to do here while we still have guys like Javon Carter? That's it. We still have these guys on the roster, right? And so while you're never going to jettison off all veterans, that's something that I am adamantly against. I do not like when teams just don't have veterans around young players, even though we got some young vets. Like Kobe at this point is a vet. He's in the league 6 years. He's a vet in a lot of ways, right? But you're looking for that guy. And so, how much is the focus truly on the future? And you're going to be tested in that, because this Bulls team, again, I do think this is going to be a team that is not looking good. I've said it. 30 to 34 wins is really where I have this team. That still puts the Bulls at either the 9th or 10th best record in the league, per what we saw last season. So the Bulls are going to have to make a decision. Now, as you get to your trade deadline, do you eventually pull the trigger on a Vooch trade that moves Jalen Smith into that starting center? Do you eventually just go ahead and take a trade for Zach LaVine to go ahead and move him off this roster? Are you playing the young guys in Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry over guys like Torrey Craig, right? Are you giving those guys minutes? And so the Bulls' true prioritization and their focus on the future is going to be something we see how committed they are to that early on. Because, for example, if you see Torrey Craig getting considerably more minutes than a Julian Phillips, yeah, Torrey, not to slight Torrey Craig is a consistent player in being an ultimate role player, journeyman in the NBA. He's the picture perfect guy for that role. But are you developing? Are you looking to do that? And that really comes down a lot to Billy Donovan as well, right? And that's kind of our next topic in this also, is this finally the roster that can play the style that Billy Donovan has been talking about and saying that he wants to see the Chicago Bulls team play for quite a while now, right? Billy Donovan wants this team to get out and play quicker. He said that the last 2, maybe even 3 offseasons. And so you've gotten that now in a lot of ways with this Josh Giddey acquisition, as well as with Modest Bucilis, as well as with Jalen Smith, right? You've gotten to that in a way. And this is also the opportunity, the best opportunity that Billy Donovan really has to shed that label that he has of not being good at player development. And that is a big question here, right? Is that Billy Donovan, one of the things that you can't knock him in, is many people say, oh, he's a college coach. And yeah, but one thing he did in college was develop players. That is basically his role there, as of course, as being the GM, and he had more control, things like that. But I don't think anybody who watched those Billy Donovan coach teams would say that he wasn't good at developing and putting the young players in an opportunity to up their game, right? And it's not something he's done here, but it hasn't been the priority either. This Bulls team went very early on when he came in here from evaluation mode. That's where they were at first. They wanted to evaluate the young talent that was on this roster before this front office got here. They did that. They made their moves. And then immediately at that trade deadline, with bringing in Nikola Vucevic and making the moves there, that team went from evaluation mode to trying to compete for something. And that team would have made the playoffs that year had it not been for Zach LaVine getting COVID at the end of that year and missing so much. They were on pace to make the playoffs. So can Billy Donovan start shedding that label of not being a developing head coach? And if he does, it would be at the right time where this Bulls roster is clearly going in a different direction, right? And now you have your point guard in Josh Giddey that can run your system the best that we've seen it ran from the point guard situation since Lonzo Ball. He's going to try to get out in transition. He's going to want the ball in his hands. He likes to pass, move the ball around, right? So he's been trying to get this more kind of quick, fast-paced, open-style offense with heavy ball movement and things like that. He's been saying that that's what he wants. Now, I have my doubts on how much he's been trying to push that in practice with the fact that we have just not moved without the ball for almost his entirety of his time here. If it wasn't Alex Caruso and Javonte Green and Ayo Dosunmu to some levels, we just don't move without the ball consistently. So this is going to be a big one. And not to just say it and put it on Billy Donovan. Like I've seen some people say, well, it all comes down. Like my boy Winton again. We know how Winton feels about Billy Donovan, rightfully so. But, it all comes down to Billy Donovan's coaching. Well, that is a big part of this. And I think if Billy Donovan does not truly adapt, like this is a true time to see, all right, what's the system that you want to run? Because now you have young, moldable players. Before, you had to play a certain way with DeMar DeRozan. You just have to. That is one of the things that you commit to when you have DeMar DeRozan on your team and in a prioritization role is that you have to play a certain style of basketball. That just is what it is. It's no way around that. If DeMar DeRozan is on your team, you have to play a certain style. Now, with that being gone, how do you now change to kind of best implement and use the players that are on this, which is something that I have knocked Billy Donovan on for the last few years, is the fact that I just don't think Billy Donovan has always put these young players, or put players, not even the young players, but just put players in a position where you're using them to the best of their ability, to their strengths. And that is a good sign of coaching, is that when you're able to do that and find ways to implement where they're strong at. So I think overall, from top to bottom, right, the front office, of course, in going younger and in prioritizing the future, we'll truly see that. Because if this is a team that struggles early on, right, and this is a team that is looking like they're going to be closer to that 28 win projection than the 40 win projection that some people have, then what do you do? And so while, I don't think this team is tanking. I think tanking is a thing that you set out for your organization, and you're setting out for that at the start of the season. I think at the start of this season, this front office, this team is hoping that they're going to have the pieces that are going to put them in a position to be able to compete. I truly think that, right? I don't agree with how successful they're going to be at it, but that's going to be the goal, and it should be the goal. But as you go forward through this season, if this team does get off to a slow start, if this team does struggle leading into the trade deadline, much like the evaluation period of AK's first season here being, let's see what we got in these young guys. All right, we don't really believe in them. We're going to send them off. We're going to send off Wendell Carter. We're going to send off Chandler Hutchinson. We're going to send off Daniel Gafford because we don't necessarily think that these are the guys that we want to build a roster around that we can get to competing anytime soon. At the same time, whereas that front office then decided to get an older player and jumpstart their timeline, it's going to be interesting to see if this front office does the opposite of this leading into this trade deadline. If the team is struggling to where they say, all right, we're just not good, we're not going to be good, instead of sending off our young players to try to get vets in here who we can try to win now with, let's prioritize this future. Let's get these older players out of here. We're going to struggle the rest of the way through. Maybe we keep our top 10 pick. We get a really good draft, because what the Bulls have here is something that it seems like the Bulls have built this thing where they got some solid pieces, but they don't have the guy. And while, it's typically thought of, you got to find your guy and you build around them. We've seen it with this team before, with Derrick Rose. This team had Kirk Heinrich. This team had Ben Gordon. This team had Luol Deng. This team had Joakim Noah. This team had a nice young, Ben Gordon was still here, right? Had young players that then when you finally got your guy in Derrick Rose, you're able to get off to the races. You were able to compete for playoff spots, having one of the best first-round playoff series in NBA history right away. And then, it was a couple of years of, okay, let's make sure who D Rose is going to be. Bam. First opportunity we get to get off some of this money, let's make our move in free agency, right? So I think that we can see something similar. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for sure, but I think we can see something similar happen with this one, whereas you have a lot of your pieces around, supporting pieces that when you finally get your guy or somebody turns into that guy, you'll be able to get off to the races slowly and quickly and more organically because you have these built-in homegrown talent pieces that you've developed here. And so we'll see if that continues for the Chicago Bulls team. This season is going to be an interesting one for what it tells us about what to expect for the future of this team, right? Because if, as some of you guys are hoping and some of you guys are saying, if this does end up being a Chicago Bulls team that does excel, let's say that they exceed those expectations, that they get closer to their win total of last year. If you get those same or close to those 39 wins that you got last year, but you've done so with a much younger roster of players that still have tons of room to develop in Josh Giddey, in Miles Bucelis, in Patrick Williams, in Julian Phillips. If you get to that place with having this young core, cool, right? You have a young, exciting team at that point. But if you don't, and that's not to say necessarily that every young guy has to have a terrible season for us to be at that 28 win expectation, but it may mean that through growing through that growth, that there's been some pain, that while they're figuring it out, and you may be seeing some things of, hey, these are some positive things that they haven't yet learned how to win. And so that's a question that this front office has. That's one that we don't have here. I can give a projection all day long, but I think those two things being in synergy, right? Does Billy Donovan finally have a roster to where he can get the system that he's been saying he wants to implement? It's going to be a show and prove year for Billy Donovan. You've been saying you want to play quicker. You've been saying you want to play faster. You've been saying you want to get with a quicker pace, but you haven't been able to do it. Let's see if you can do it. Now, the limitations of this team are still loud, right? You still don't have very much three-point shooting. You still aren't going to be a great defensive team. You still, where's the clutch player going to step in at? But Billy Donovan is an important role in that as far as, hey, you can either fit in with what we're trying to do, or it can be made obvious this season that Billy Donovan just isn't the guy for this young team and to try to develop them. Now, I do think either way he's going to see out the last year of his deal. This isn't something where I'm saying that they're going to necessarily fire him, midway through the season, no matter how bad we struggle if we do. But I do think this is a team that ultimately, that trying to live in two worlds, which they still are doing a little bit, but not necessarily as glaring as before, you got to bring those two worlds together and have one clear vision of what you're trying to do. And is it you're going to be focused on the future, or are you going to be stuck on trying to compete in the present? And, maybe we find some shred of luck to where both those things end up being the same thing. Maybe we do get lucky. Maybe we are building towards the future and developing guys, but while these guys are developing, they're playing damn good basketball and we're competing. We're getting them to play and things like that. But I think ultimately it leads to this. And I'm going to throw this question to you guys is when you look at the Chicago Bulls and you look at the season coming up, the difficult schedule, whatever else it is, however you look at it, is getting to the playoffs more important, or do you truly view keeping that top 10 pick in this deep draft as being more important? And I listen, there's enough to be said either way on how it could work out for your team. There's a conversation to be made either way. And I understand that there's a big conversation to be made either way in this. And it just comes down to how the Bulls see it, how much they feel confident in this young core, and how much this young core shows, right? But, and whether you're trying to go for it and you miss out on the top 10 pick, or you think you're in the camp of we have to keep that top 10 pick because that is the chance to get a franchise-altering talent. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, I said we got an interesting trade idea. This one comes from Zach Buckley of Bleacher Report, and he said this: Zach LaVine and a 2029 first-round pick swap. Pick swap. So not necessarily you're not losing a pick outright. You still have a pick to the Denver Nuggets for Michael Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji. Now, this is something that I wanted to bring because I thought the pieces coming back in this would be interesting. Keep in mind the Bulls don't have an open roster spot, so that would mean that the Bulls would have to cut or waive Ernolat Batum to make this deal happen. And the reason why this is interesting for the Denver Nuggets is that you got to question yourself on Zach LaVine is a player that so far has thrived in being an isolation scorer, heavy, being on ball, things like that. When you look at what the Denver Nuggets bring, they typically don't play that way, right? They like to be the team that kind of spreads things out. Michael Porter Jr., one of the reasons he has worked on that team when he has worked, not to say it's always been perfect, but it's been because of, the fact that he doesn't command a high usage rate. He doesn't command a lot for that. He only gets he's averaged over the course of his career with Denver 12 shots per game. And, that's only, for example, to put that in perspective, only 2 more shots than Patrick Williams, right? But he's been able to be highly efficient per the shots he's getting now. Last season in the playoffs was bad for Michael Porter Jr. There's no mistake to be made about that. And with the Denver Nuggets, they've lost so many defensive pieces to that team in Bruce Brown and KCP. Would they look to be adding some shooting? They got Christian Braun, who's slated right now to be their starting 2 guard. So there's questions in regard to that. Yes, Zach LaVine brings a scoring punch. When you pair that with Jamal Murray, that'll be an interesting backcourt to watch. Make no mistake about it from the offensive standpoint. But the fact of the matter is that Zach LaVine, I don't know if he really fits that team. But I do think this is an interesting trade scenario. I do think when you look at if the Denver Nuggets do see Michael Porter Jr. as their chance to add some talent to this team to continue a championship run, that's where you gotta wonder some things at. Now, the thing that could make this all work is that they have Jokic. And so because when you have Jokic and his passing ability from that big man position, maybe that can work. I like the trade that we talked about a couple of weeks ago in which, some reporter, I can't remember which one it was. I can't remember which reporter it was. It may have been Keller Strauss, who mentioned how the Miami Heat would kind of make the most sense for a Zach LaVine, considering that he'd be replacing with Tyler Hero, things like that. And I could kind of understand that. But overall, I'll say this, and I'll leave it at this. This isn't a bad trade. I think the fact that you're doing a pick swap instead of giving up a first-round pick ultimately, and by 2029, what is the Denver Nuggets going to look like? What are the Chicago Bulls going to look like? Maybe the situations are reversed. It's out enough to where maybe you feel confident of saying, hey, even if the Nuggets probably aren't going to be competing like they are now in 5 years. So maybe by then, even if they do swap, we're not necessarily going from like a top 5 pick to being in the bottom 25. Maybe we're a little bit closer by that point. Hopefully, by then the Chicago Bulls are much closer to being a perennial playoff team. So, it's a calculated risk. And I don't think this would be something that if you ask me in a world of is this going to happen or if it's not, I'll say it's not. I think that the Denver Nuggets, in already adding Russell Westbrook, have already added a player that's going to be high volume for them coming off the bench and kind of be ball dominant. So I don't know how much that fits together, but weirder things have happened in the NBA. So again, this isn't a rumor. This isn't one of the things of, hey, we've heard the Denver Nuggets are interested in Zach LaVine. This is a purely speculative piece from Zach Buckley in regards of him just saying, hey, could be something that could work. It's a bold trade idea was the article that it came from. But you guys can let me know what you think on that down below. But let's get into the only voicemail we got today. This one's from Draymond. We're going to go ahead and play that now.
What's up, bro? Man, this is Dre, man. Man, I love the show, man. You kind of ruined it for me, man, because I don't even watch any of this other shit no more, bro. I just watch your show. all the time. I got you locked in, man. I watch your guys and all that stuff, bro. But what I wanted to say is, man, I wish that you guys would do more. I want you guys to do some more stuff on like the Chicago Fire. I know you don't do any soccer stuff. I would like you to do some stuff on the Chicago Hounds. And was it another one, man, that I wanted you guys to do? Maybe it was like the lower league that's in Canada. I think, man, like that we should have like another league, just like kind of like baseball has, where they have like different tiers of like basketball leagues, and then you move up to leagues and stuff like that. I mean, there's plenty of money out there. I don't know why they don't do it, man. But man, I love the show, and man, keep up the good work, man. You know, I think you're gonna move on and do big things, man. After this, man. Thank you, man, and watch the show all the time. Peace.
Listen, first of all, thank you for loving the show. And thank you to everybody for getting us past 20,000 subscribers. Our 3rd year anniversary passed. I didn't even say anything about it because I've been so in the weeds of putting in this work. I really didn't even think about it, right? So, thank you guys for 3 years, 3 of the most amazing years of my life. My time of being on this planet have been doing this show, interacting with Bulls fans, the relationships that we've built, all that type of stuff. Now, as far as you would like us to cover the Chicago Fire and Hounds here, I've put out fillers to get a host for a Chicago Fire show. I don't have time to do it. Between doing the Bears, the Bulls, the Sky, and NBA Central, I have no more room to add any other shows to my plate. Oh, and Locked On Bulls. No room for any other shows on my plate. I just don't. Now, I would love to, so I'm going to put out the fillers here. If you're interested in hosting a podcast and you want to join the Chi-Town Sports Central network of shows, Chicago Fire, if you're interested in doing the Chicago Fire, reach out to me. All my socials are in the description of this. Also, plug them at the end of the show because we would love, like, the one thing that Chi-Town Sports Central is supposed to be is all inclusive. We want to cover every Chicago sport eventually, of course, per scale, right? But you got to have the host, and I want somebody, as we do, and our thing is every show, the host of every show, I want them to be passionate about the teams that they're covering. So when you look at the fact that we got Blackhawk Central, shout out to what Stokes does over there. Shout out to him, amazing over there. Chicago White Sox Central, Chicago Cubs Central, both hosted by Big Kev. What he does over there, amazing. Chicago Bulls Central, you're here now. Chicago Bears Central, Chicago White Sox Central, Chicago Sky Central. Like, we do everything. And so, yeah, we would absolutely love to add a Chicago Fire show. But I'll just say this. You got to have the host. You got to have the people that are passionate about it. And I'll tell you what, I just don't have the time. I'm not even – one thing that I've learned in doing this, I have to be honest about the time constraints that I have. And right now, brother, I just ain't got the time. But I love you guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.